Hello, S.B.R. podcast community. This is your host, Brian McDonough, and what a show I have for you today. But before I get started, I want to take a moment to welcome any new listeners to the show. For those of you who are tuning in for the first time, the premise of the S.B.R. podcast is to interview personalities in the sports business industry. With each interview, my goal is to dive into compelling topics and pick the brains of those individuals who are leaders in the sports business world. Today is July 9th, and let's face it, we all miss sports. Sport usually is not only a great distraction from our day-to-day lives, but it brings people together. Now, I can't speak for everyone, but I really can't help but miss America's pastime. Baseball, to me, is like a beacon for the summer. The sport is a tradition, a rite of passage that carries us into the fall season, and without it, I really can't help but feel a little lost, somewhat out of place. Baseball is scheduled to be back later this month on July 23rd. With that, we can all enjoy a glimpse of normalcy, even if it only comes in a 60-game schedule with no fans. Either way, Major League Baseball is pushing forward, and organizations across the league are gearing up for the season. Our next guest is a representative from one of those baseball clubs, the Philadelphia Phillies. This sports business professional is the director of sales for the Phillies. And today we'll be diving into multiple topics from his day-to-day, how he got his start in sports, the ups and downs over the past couple of decades for the Phillies, and of course, the inevitable, how COVID is changing the landscape of Major League Baseball. Without further ado, I want to welcome the director of sales for the Phillies, Derek Schuster. Derek, how are you?
I'm doing great, Brian. How are you doing?
I'm really good, Derek, and thanks for joining me today. I am from Philadelphia, so I'm a huge Philadelphia Phillies fan, as well as just a Philadelphia sports fan. So it's always great to talk to someone in the same city, especially someone who shares a passion for the same team as me. So if you don't mind, Derek, just kind of tell me a little bit about your background and how you became the director of sales for the Phillies.
Sure, Brian. Yeah, I'm originally from Pottsville, Pennsylvania, which is about an hour and a half north of Philadelphia. So it's definitely Phillies country and Philadelphia sports country. But
sure.
I went to the western part of the state to college, to Robert Morris University, which is in the Pittsburgh area.
Of course.
And when my major was sports management, I have my degree in business administration. When I was going to college, I worked for the Pittsburgh Pirates as an intern in their sales and marketing department, and really kind of fell in love with the industry from that point. It was a great place to work, good people, and again, just really kind of fell in love with the pace of the sports industry. So I was doing that. I was with the Pirates, who were still at Three River Stadium at the time. And once my internship was over, I was fortunate enough to get hired on full-time as an account executive at the time, still at Three River Stadium. So I was selling season ticket plans, group ticket sales, pretty much anything we can get someone to come to a Pirates game at the time at Three River Stadium.
Sure.
Helped close down Three River Stadium, was fortunate enough to be a part of the team that opened up PNC Park, which is, we were talking before, beautiful ballpark, great, location in Pittsburgh.
Mm-hmm.
So I did that, had a big focus on the premium sales there and really kind of fell in love with that part of the business as well. Enjoyed my time with the Pirates. It got to, a point where I wanted to kind of expand my horizons and just kind of take on a little bit more responsibility. And it didn't, it just kind of wasn't in the forecast with the Pirates. So through a mutual contact that I had in the business, I was brought on. I knew a guy at the time that was the vice president of sales and marketing for the Sixers,
okay,
who were at the time obviously owned by Comcast Spectacor, and under that umbrella, it was the Flyers and the Sixers and the Phantoms, and I think the Philadelphia Wings at the time, the Kicks, the soccer team. Anyway, through that contact, I came in and interviewed for a job as the director of sales with the Philadelphia Phantoms. I wanted to get kind of clipped back to the eastern part of the state, interviewed for the job, ended up fortunately getting it, and moved to Philadelphia. I worked at Comcast Spectacor with the Phantoms for about a year and a half. I randomly met a sales trainer that helped train my staff that used to work for the Phillies.
Okay.
And at the time, the Phillies were at Veterans Stadium. And he and I kind of hit it off and asked me if I would ever be interested in talking to anyone with the Phillies about, opening up the new ballpark. And I had experience in Pittsburgh. And he introduced me to my now boss, and we hit it off. And I just fell in love with the Phillies organization. Joined the Phillies in April 21st of 2003 to start a premium sales department. And I've been with the Phillies ever since, taking on more just job responsibilities over the years. So it was very fortunate to meet the people that I did, and happy that it ended up that way, that I joined the Phillies.
And that's pretty exciting. It sounds like, Derek, you got to experience the opening of the PNC ballpark as well as Citizens Bank Park. Can you kind of talk about that experience from a sales perspective and just from a employee's perspective working for the Phillies organization as well as the Pirates organization?
Yeah, I mean, it was for the Pirates, it was kind of a blur. I mean, I was so young at the time, and I was just so new into the business, but it was a lot of fun. I mean, anytime you're embarking on that type of a journey with, your coworkers and everyone's kind of pulling on the same end of the rope, it's very rewarding when you get to the finish line and finally open it up and see, everything everyone was working on and going through the ballpark in a hard hat, and seeing kind of the walls go up and the steel go up. And it's really cool to kind of see it all take shape. So it was a tremendous experience with the Pirates. I did learn a lot, and I brought some of that experience to the Phillies.
Okay.
And, tried to avoid, some of the pitfalls that we faced, and to capitalize on some of the good things that we did, which there were a lot of with the Pirates. And it was, again, even almost more rewarding the second time around. I kind of knew what I was in for, and I got to, I guess, appreciate it a little bit more the second time around. But it was unbelievable experience to get to do that with, my Phillies family. And it was just so cool.
Sure. Back
in April of 2004 when we opened the place. It was a lot of fun. A lot of hard work, but it was a lot of fun.
I was actually there on opening day against the Reds, and I know Randy Wolf was on the mound. Obviously,
I was going to ask you that question if you remember who started that game.
Yeah, Ken Griffey Jr., of course, was playing for the Reds at the time, so it was exciting. And I was there it was
unbelievable.
The Steve Carlton statue got unveiled, so I was there for that.
Okay,
it was a really cool
it's awesome
for my dad and I. And I'm a little biased, but as we've talked, and I went to school in Pittsburgh as well, so we have that in common. And I think PNC Park and Citizens Bank Park are arguably the two best ballparks in Major League Baseball. So
I'm biased as well, but I share that opinion.
You definitely got a cool experience there. And now you've worked your way up to this position. You're the director of sales for the Phillies. So what's your day-to-day like? Ultimately, who do you manage? Who do you report to, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure. I report to our senior vice president of sales, John Weber.
Okay.
So John and I, under John's direction, we lead the sales team on the day-to-day basis. So I'm responsible for all of our communication with our fans and with our, season ticket holders specifically, laying out what we're going to sell, how we're going to sell it, when we're going to sell it, our timeline, when people call the Phillies, what we're saying, making sure everyone's saying the right things, we're all on the same page, and just really kind of managing the overall, not just communication, but the overall sales game plan. It's a complete team effort. We're all kind of working for the same end goal, but just making sure we're all organized and we're all in concert where, we're not stepping over each other's feet to try to get something done, and, prioritizing what's the most important thing when, to operate is really, really important on how we do things.
Great. And I'm sure, with that being said, the Philadelphia Phillies organization, you being from Pottsville, it's had a lot of lows, but a lot of highs as well. And in more recent years, a lot of highs, with 2008 being the World Series and those pennant runs they had there in the late 2000s. What has it been like working in sales for a team that has experienced those highs and lows? If you can kind of touch on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. I mean, truthfully, before I came to the Phillies, I haven't had a winning season in sports.
Sure.
When I was at the Pirates, unfortunately, they weren't really winning a lot. So I saw a lot of not so great baseball. Still, I love baseball, so any baseball is good. But I saw my share of losses until I joined the Phillies. So, it's really one of those things you have to really always adapt to the sales climate. And perfect example, when I joined the Phillies, we were getting ready to open up Citizens Bank Park, and people obviously were interested in seeing the new park, and we had a tremendous amount of interest. And it was our job to kind of capitalize on that interest and making sure that we had, enough offerings to meet what people were looking for. Sure. And then, we opened up the ballpark, and then like a lot of teams after that, if you don't win immediately, that honeymoon period of the ballpark ends pretty quickly.
It does.
And for us, we still had some success. The team was up and coming, if you remember at the time. We didn't kind of arrive yet, but we were still up and coming. But from a fan standpoint, after 2004, it fell off a little bit. And it was our job to kind of, it's still a new ballpark. It's a beautiful ballpark, and still trying to capitalize on that enthusiasm. After that, the team took off. From 2007 to 11, and then through that whole period, we just kind of kept building that momentum. And at a certain point, it was when we start to get to our sellout streaks and so forth. It was just really managing demand, and It was something like I've never seen before. When I was with the Pirates and with the Phillies, if you can get anyone to buy season tickets, it's always a huge, it's a huge victory. Any baseball team to have someone commit to 81 games or even any type of plan. But, we had a season ticket wait list. We had to tell people, no, you couldn't buy season tickets. And, that person that wanted to bring a group down of, 500 people on a Saturday, we'd have to say, no, we could do maybe 250 on a Tuesday in April. So it was really making sure we were still engaging our fans, making them sure, certainly understand that their business is still important, because we know that's not going to last forever, and it didn't, of course, as we all know. But you don't want to ever alienate any of your fan base when times are good. And so for that period, we just tried to ride the momentum as long as we could, capitalize on it as much as we could, but prepare when things were eventually going to end. Sure. And after the 2011 season. We made it to the playoffs. We didn't make it out of the first round. 2012, the team still, was good. And we still had strong, very strong attendance. But then after that, we started seeing, the downward turn, both with the team and attendance. And we had to get a lot more creative with what we did and what our ticket plans were. Before, when we were really good, we could slot in a big promotion on a Wednesday night in April.
Of course, yeah.
And then, because we knew people would come. But then, when things turn, you have to kind of get back to your kind of the fundamentals and, hey, we got to slot our best promotions into the days where we think fans can come. And we have to be, very creative on how to get people down to the ballpark in those months when school's still in session. Sure. The weather's not so great. So it's all about adapting. And it's all about being able to pivot and adapt to your sales climate.
Yeah, and like you said, when things were going well for the Phillies, they were going extremely well. Multiple playoff appearances, a World Series championship, and it's tough to quantify really a player's influence over ticket sales. But over the years, would you say what Philly, more or less, would you say is more responsible for bringing the fans to the ballpark, or do you think there was a fan favorite that kind of attributed to that core group?
Yeah, again, like that era, it was kind of your core guys that came up together. Your Utley and Rollins and Ryan Howard, Cole Hamels. Like those guys kind of came up together. So of course, everyone has their favorite out of that group. But it really, so to me, that was more of just the team in general.
Okay.
Where we kind of hit, I think, a new level of, where I think it got in my looking back on this, and when you talked to me about this, when I went back and really reflected, when Cliff Lee came back the second time, when we signed him, I think it was like December 13th of 2010. I'll never forget that when we thought it was going to happen almost the night before, that next day, like things exploded. And you would think to yourself, like, well, that didn't happen after you won the World Series in 2008. It did. Yeah. But it just kept going up. And at that moment, that's when we had to stop selling season tickets, because it just got, when Cliff Lee came back, we're going into that 11th season, and you had the rotation of Halladay and Cliff Lee and Cole Hamels. It was just, rightfully so. Everyone was so like stoked for the next year, and we were on paper. A really, really good team, and sales just took it to a new level after that. Like it just exploded. Like our season ticket base at that time was like 28,500, and the ballpark holds 43 and change. So I'm not a math major, but you didn't have to sell that many more tickets to get to a sellout when your season ticket base was that much. So Cliff Lee comes to mind, and then when we signed Harper
that's my next question. Yep.
February 28th of 19, I was in Florida at the time on a client trip in spring training, but things just absolutely exploded when that news happened. We sold over 110,000 tickets the 24 hours after we signed Bryce Harper. 110,000.
Wow.
It was crazy. I mean, we sold 350,000 tickets the week after. So things just absolutely exploded with the signing of like a Bryce Harper. So, and it was just a different time because obviously a year ago, the team wasn't where it was in 2010 when we brought back Cliff Lee, but that excitement along with, we signed JT Realmuto earlier. The Bryce Harper signing was crazy in a good way.
And can you talk to me a little bit more about Bryce Harper? Because we were considering at the time, Manny Machado. I remember the Phillies were considering Manny Machado, and Bryce Harper was out there. There was even talks of Mike Trout at some point in time. But the personality of Bryce Harper, and from a marketing perspective, I think just fits so well with the city of Philadelphia, in my impression, from what I've seen. Can you talk more about that and what he's meant to Philadelphia as well as the team, the Phillies?
I mean, he means everything. I mean, again, just talking about those numbers. I mean, our season ticket numbers, we almost went up 50% with our season ticket base because of Bryce. And again, I think we have a good team around Bryce too. So it's not to take anything away from the team around it and what the baseball operations department did, because Bryce Harper on a team that's going to win 60 games isn't as impactful. Bringing Bryce Harper into a team that, in my opinion, is already good, ready to take the next step is huge. Sure. So, I mean, his mystique, his just, his personality, and, there's not a lot of players out there like him in baseball when it comes to that total package of personality and the ability. And he's done everything right since he's been here. I mean, he's been terrific for the city. He hustles. He's gritty. He always says the right thing. And, you're a fan. I mean, I'm sure, what do you think of Bryce Harper? I mean, he's great, right? I mean, I think he's done everything for us.
The perfect player to bring into Philadelphia at the perfect time, in my impression. And I think that signing him for 13 years was the right move. That's just what I think. And I think it's going to pay dividends. And I think we'll see, shortly with the continuation or the start of the season.
Yeah. I mean, it's a shame because I think he had a good year in his first year. And I think most people would agree with that. But I think being more comfortable in the city now after a year and kind of having your routine down and knowing, even simple things of, hey, what's my routine getting to the ballpark? What do I do on, those little things I think get overlooked sometimes on someone's first year. And now that he's kind of here a year and understands, what we're like, what the fans are like, what the front office is like,
sure.
I think he's poised to even have a better year. I wish it wasn't just 60 games. But I think, him being here is such a huge asset to the organization and the city.
I couldn't agree more. And let's talk about these 60 games and COVID, if you don't mind.
Sure.
It's probably been obviously a huge challenge for any sports organization, especially baseball, with MLBPA, Player Association talks and whether or not there would be a season. Now that it's been determined there is, how have you kind of been gearing up for the season? What have you been doing as a director of sales? Because there aren't going to be any fans, but can you just kind of touch on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think back, our staff has been working remotely since March 16th. Our last day in the office was March 13th when all of this was starting to break. And, leading up to it, no one knew at the time it would, what it would be. But,
sure.
I'm proud of the way we planned as an organization. We deployed our staff, that everyone's able to work from home, to answer phones from home, meaning like the Philly sales line from home. And of course, we've grown in our communication and how we operate over the last 4 months. And I think to myself, you're right, without fans, someone will say, well, why, are you busy? You're not, we've been more busy over the last couple of months than I could imagine some days because, it's just contingency plan on top of contingency plan, and you think it's going to go one way and you have everything ready to go, and then it pivots and it goes a different way. So, we've been, working hard, one, to see if we are going to have fans, and two, just basically how we communicate with our fan base. Sure. And our fans that bought tickets for the 2020 season. It's just so important for us to make sure we're treating them right. We're communicating with them properly. We're sensitive, and we're giving them their options, and that they understand what their options are. Okay. And we've taken a lot of care into that type of communication plan and how we're going to operate that. So that's been a big part of what we've done for the last few months, because it's changed so much. But just understanding the cadence of when we want to communicate, working with Major League Baseball to know when we're allowed to communicate certain announcements. And then making sure our staff, who's, like I said, all remote, we're all on the same page of, all right, here's what we're doing. Here's how we're doing it. Here's what how we're answering the questions when we get them. And here, we need to make sure we're being flexible, we're being sensitive, because, we know things will change, will come back eventually. I don't know if it's ever going to get back to the old norm, but we'll get back to times that we could have a full stadium, sure, or a full ballpark. And we need to make sure that our fans, are with us, the entire time. They understand their options. We're treating them right. We're being compassionate, and we just really need to make sure that we're treating everyone the right way. And that's what we've worked on so much. Secondly, we also have to have a plan if we are able to have fans. So, although it's unlikely, we still have to have a plan if we can't have fans in the building this year. And we've been working a lot on what that would look like with social distance seating, what the capacity would be, how we'd operate, how we need to make sure our fans are safe. And that's not just the sales department. That's the whole organization coming up with a plan of, my job and my department is, the seating and how we're going to do things and how we would sell the tickets. Sure. And then it's working with our operations and every other department on, what's our message from a safety standpoint? How are we pulling this off? Working with our legal team, working with MLB to make sure we're doing the right thing. So it's there's a lot going on, and I think our staff has done we've done a nice job of being on the same page and communicating with our fans appropriately.
Yeah, and I think it's so important in any business organization, let alone a sports organization where you're putting so much signage and verbiage out there, that there's a cohesiveness between sales and marketing. Do you feel that now more than ever, you guys have this cohesiveness and this working relationship that is, vital for all this to work? And have you been working with the marketing team closely? And this is just for a business question.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Phillies in general, and this is not to take away anything from any other organization I work for, but we do not work in silos, and the communication between the departments and kind of the team feeling at the Phillies, I think is leads to some of our success we've had off the field. So the answer is yes. I mean, we're always working with other departments, the marketing team, the sponsorship team, the social media team, because, if I have an idea and I want to say, hey, we're going to start selling 2021 season tickets now that the schedule's out. Sure. I want to do a drop in today. I want to do a social media hit, but then our sponsorship team has something else planned for that day, or we have something else going on. It's just making sure we're all on the same page. Because as you said, we don't want to, we need to make sure we're cohesive and we're not trying to, either overburden our fans or come out with weird messages. We just need to make sure that we're sensitive in what we're putting out, when we're putting it out, when's the right timing. So constant communication with other departments. Absolutely.
And I have one last question for you. It's about the season in itself. And whenever I have an individual on the show who represents an organization, I like to ask kind of for a prediction here. 60-game season. What do you think of the Phillies? How do you think they'll end up? If you could just give me maybe a record prediction or anything like that. Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no. Well, listen,
I'm sure you've thought of it.
I have. I think our team is positioned pretty well. I think in all of this, naturally, I think something that people forget about is we have Joe Girardi's now our manager. There's nothing to take away from Gabe in the previous regime, but Joe just brings such a credibility from his time in New York in winning, fortunately at our expense in '09.
Yeah.
But he's just just brings a lot of credibility with him as a player, as a manager. Bringing in Brian Price as a pitching coach, I think has been a huge addition to the team. So I think we're in great position. Obviously, health is going to be a big concern with every team.
Sure.
And we're in a tough division. I mean, we're going to be playing obviously the NL East, which is tough, but then also playing games against the AL East, which everyone knows with the Yankees and the Rays, Red Sox, the Blue Jays are up and coming. I mean, we're in for a dogfight, but I think we'll be very competitive, and I think we have a really, really good shot of making the postseason. Again, got to stay healthy, but I think the pieces are in place.
Great. No, I know I'm excited. I think any baseball fan's excited to finally have baseball back. It's kind of the signaling of summer. It's been a strange summer, so it's very exciting to get some normalcy back with baseball. So
we're very excited to have it back, and can't wait till we just get on TV and gives people an outlet, something to watch live. I love watching the old games, but believe me, I'm missing new sporting events.
Yeah. Well, that's what it's all about. Derek, thank you so much for joining the show today.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it, and good luck to you.
Thank you. Well, there you have it. The director of sales for the Philadelphia Phillies, Derek Schuster. And Derek is exactly right. We can only watch so many reruns of games over and over again. Like the Phillies, MLB organizations have a lot of planning to do. I think one of the most compelling comments Derek made was just how busy he's really been. These are certainly extraordinary times, and during times like these, all he can really do is plan. The challenges for the Phillies and other Major League Baseball organizations is, what are you really planning for? We're uncertain what the future of the 2020 season holds, but one thing is for certain. We can all be thankful for the individuals like Derek Schuster who are working day in and day out to bring us a product that we all know and love. If you enjoyed today's episode of the S.B.R. podcast, please follow me on Twitter at SBR_podcast. I'm also on Instagram at the same handle, SBR_podcast. And if you feel the need to provide any further feedback, please visit www.sportsbusinessreview.com, the official home of the SBR podcast. Once again, my name is Brian McDonough, and have a great weekend, everyone.